and welcome back to Museful Episode 2, the art podcast, your art resource. I'm really excited today to be talking about my academic journey and the do's and don'ts of, being in school as a art major or in general, art academic rules and stuff like that. Since we're doing a career podcast, I figured it would make a lot of sense for you to know a little bit more about me and my academic journey. So that way you know exactly who is giving you all this information, what background do I have. I think it's really important that you understand where I'm coming from, aside from knowing me, Jazz Lebeth, your host, but knowing also what experiences I've been through when it comes to my academic career. So let's begin from when I graduated in high school. I knew I wanted a college education, but I wasn't quite sure what field I wanted to go into. So I immediately graduated high school and went straight into Valencia College. It's a community college with the intent of getting my Gen Eds done. And so for clarification, Gen Eds means general education, like math, science, foreign language, English, history. They're usually the general college requirements. They can differ between various institutions that don't dive into the coursework that would have to do with your major. They're just the general common knowledge that we all should share, I guess, as a society. When I was graduating high school, my not so great counselors were discouraging community college. But let me make this clear. Community college is not the end of the world. If you don't get into your state university or something like that, community college is a great alternative. They are cheaper. And in my opinion and in my experience, I found that Valencia was a lot more of a community vibe than my bigger university later on. So you want to choose something that's the right fit for you and what kind of experience you're going to have, as well as does this college fulfill what I'm trying to do. And we'll get into the do's and don'ts later. But for right now, at this point, I decided I'm going to go to Valencia College. I'm going to get my general education courses done. And when I entered college, I had no clue what I was getting myself into because I was a first generation college student. And for clarification purposes on that, first generation college students means neither of your parents went to college. It doesn't matter whether your siblings went to college, your aunts, your uncles, even your grandparents went to college. As long as neither of your parents have gone to college, you still count as a first generation graduate student. And in high school, I was president of my cybersecurity club, and I was in video production for about 3 years when I was initially introduced to Adobe and the Creative Suite, and I worked on various school projects that were video related and school news reports. But I also have always loved art and being creative, and so I combined my passion for art and creativity and my skills when it came to technology, and I arrived at this result that graphic design would be the career that I decided to dedicate my time to. Keep in mind, I was also working part-time in order to prevent failing any classes and getting overwhelmed, so I chose to go to school part-time and work part-time when I started college. Obviously, going to school part-time means that you'll be in school longer, but as someone who wanted to get the most out of all of my classes and maintain a high GPA, I decided to go slow and steady, which I highly recommend for your average college student. If you can afford to go a little bit slower and take your time with all of your classes, I highly recommend that you do that. I understand that there are some scholarships and some school requirements that you need to be taking 4 or more classes, which understandable, do what you can do. But if you have the option to be part-time, I highly recommend it. In case you don't know the difference between part-time and full-time being a student, being full-time means you're taking 4 or more classes, and being part-time means you're taking 3 or less classes. Obviously, each course can have different credit hours, so look into that if you can, just to make sure that you're fulfilling all of your scholarship needs and all of your major needs. While I was earning my AA degree at Valencia, my electives were geared towards completing any prerequisites that the graphic design program at the university I would be transferring to would clear out. So that way I would save more money on taking classes at the community college versus the more expensive university. For clarification, my transfer program was called Direct Connect, which is a really great opportunity at Valencia College where any student that went to Valencia and got their AA degree could continue their education with guaranteed entry into the University of Central Florida. So the general idea was that you would go to Valencia or the community college to take any of your gen eds at a cheaper price and take advantage of clearing out your prerequisites via electives. So when you transferred to UCF or any other university, you had less classes to take and could earn your bachelor's degree much quicker. With this in mind, I completed my AA from Valencia in July of 2020 and immediately began classes at UCF online amidst the pandemic at the time. And a quick side note, my classes did go from face-to-face to online throughout the entirety of the year 2020. At this point, everything had gone smooth from the transfer from Valencia to UCF, but UCF's graphic design degree required a portfolio in order to allow students into the program. If you don't pass a portfolio, you can't get into the program. Quick side note, the portfolio review for graphic design students was only offered once a year, and I passed the drawing portion but not the design portion. And so things started to get a bit tricky because I had a decision to make. Do I wait a year to create more art and revise my portfolio in hopes that I would get into the program a year later, 2022, or do I declare another major to try and graduate sooner? At this point, I was getting very burnt out. I had worked consecutively, no breaks, no summers off, from the moment I graduated high school that fall to spring 2021. The burnout was definitely getting to me at this point, and I chose to declare a different major, visual arts management, and digital media as my minor. I'll get into the specifics of the visual arts management program at UCF in another video. If you want to hear about it, just comment down below. But I decided to take the summer off. Up until this point, I had consecutively taken classes to hurry the process along because I was getting very tired of being in school for this long, and we had just been through the pandemic and I was working full-time at this point. Things were rough, to put it lightly. During this transition from declaring my graphics design major to a visual arts management major, I took the summer off to prepare and focus on my health for a little bit. At this point in my academic journey, I call fall of 2021 the realignment of my life because I definitely felt really lost and rejected at this point. I mourned the lost potential of being in a graphic design career and accepted this new future very quickly. I found that this new degree, this new bachelor's degree in visual arts management, actually ignited more passions in me than I had ever originally thought. I began to take more classes that were geared towards fulfilling that degree, and I felt like being a museum director was a sustainable career goal to have that I wanted, and it still is. During the summer, the next year in 2022, there were less classes offered. I started to apply for internships, start building experience in my resume for future opportunities, and I was having so much fun at this point in my degree. In case you don't know, internships can count as college credit. You have to look into your college or university's requirements on how you can do that, but even the work experience is just as valuable so that you can build a network of people in your profession who could potentially offer you jobs when you graduate. After I completed that initial internship, I definitely knew at that point that I wanted to stay in my major. I had a little bit of real life experience and I had a little bit of academic experience, and I was having a really good time aspiring to be a museum director and all that came with it, or just being in the museum space. It was very comfortable. I loved being around artwork all around me. Even though I was a creative at heart, being around creatives was equally as inspiring. At this point, I began to have a little bit of trouble with scheduling my classes due to studio art classes taking longer and overlapping alongside my work schedule, because at this point I was full-time at work and part-time at school. So it limited the amount of classes that I could take each semester. And this is something important you want to know if you're in school right now and you're trying to go into fine art or art management, or my exact major, visual arts management. Most studio art electives cannot be taken online, at least at my university. So again, plan ahead, look at the course mode and when they are offered, because what will happen is you want to take a morning class and an afternoon class, and they overlap in times because these classes are at least 3 hours. So you want to be careful with when you're scheduling these classes and when you're planning ahead. And so what ended up happening was the overlaps delayed my graduation date multiple times, later than I ever thought I would graduate. But I completed my degree this past spring, and I finally got my degree with magna cum laude, and I am so proud of myself. In case you don't know, magna cum laude means you have a 3.8 to a 3.9 GPA. It just means you have like a really high GPA. And so that brings me to now, post-graduation, a couple months later. What's going on in my life right now? Well, without giving too much away, I am gaining more experience at a museum right now, and Museful will be my secondary long-term project to utilize my skills and contribute to the art industry. So I'm really happy you guys are here watching this video. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. And so now let's get into the do's and don'ts of being in academia. So, academic do's and don'ts, and they're a little bit geared towards art. I have a list here. I'm going to read through it and talk about each point that I'm making. Do take a moment before applying to college to understand what you are signing yourself up for and what career you are aiming to achieve through obtaining the degree. Understand that going to college is a big responsibility. There's a lot of money involved. There's a lot of time involved, and both of those things are very precious to each of us. I think it's really important to know if college is suitable for you. There are some people who just can't do college, they can't do school. That structure is not suitable for them, and that's okay. College is not for everyone. School, the way it's traditionally taught, is not for everyone. It doesn't agree with who they are. Some people need to be more hands-on. Some people need to be, sitting at a desk and doing everything digitally. Some people love to be in the classroom. I find myself to be more comfortable in the classroom, which is how I knew college was right for me. But if it doesn't work for you, don't feel forced to go into college, especially because you are the one that's gonna have to be in college every day. Don't sign yourself up for something that can be very expensive and not come out the other side of it with a degree, because at that point it's not really worth it. What I also wanted to emphasize is that not all careers require a degree. I'm noticing now more than ever that some jobs actually accept experience in the field versus an actual degree, and they're kind of interchangeable in that way. So look into whatever career you are aspiring to do, if it's a sustainable career, if it meets your goals in life and your passions, and see if it's the right choice to go to college. So take a moment, understand what you're signing yourself up for, everything that comes with it, and what your end goal is. Don't let anyone discourage you from choosing a school you want to go to, even community college. As long as you are looking at all the important aspects when choosing a school, such as cost and housing, do what feels right to you. You are the person who has to go to that school every day. This is something that's a little bit more personal to me, because when I was in high school, I was very unsure of myself. I thought I wanted to go to these fancy universities in different states, and it wasn't that realistic for me at the time. And I remember my counselors being discouraging of going to Valencia. And when I think about going to Valencia when I was younger, it was my happy place. I really have fond memories when I went to that school, even though it was a community college, even though it was smaller. In fact, it was cheaper, and I had a great time while I went to that school. So don't let anybody discourage you from going to a school, and don't let anybody force you from going to college, because at the end of the day, you are the person that has to be there every day. And I'm pretty sure if you're not having a good time sitting through these classes every day in a place you don't want to be, it's not going to end well. Do mix your electives with your gen eds. I thought I was being smart taking all my gen eds first, but in reality, I screwed myself over because later on, my electives overlapped. And so a little bit more details on this. Gen ed classes are typically an hour and a half, an hour, 45 minutes. I know a lot of college classes go by that 45 to 15 minute hour mark. And so when it comes to studio art classes specifically, when you're hands-on drawing, you're hands-on in the studio painting, ceramics, things like that, or doing photography, these are courses that are going to take a lot longer for you to get these projects done while in class. Whereas your gen ed classes are going to be less time for sure, probably an hour to almost 2 hours, but they're going to be a lot simpler in terms of the amount of time you're in class, how much work you have to do. When it comes to artwork, it's definitely more time consuming to get the painting done or to get the drawing done, to make sure you have this many drawings in order to submit for your, by next week or something like that, in my experience at least. But when it comes to English homework, you have an essay due by this day, and you can take all that homework home and you can grind it out much quicker than taking 10 hours on a painting. It's very different coursework because you want to be able to have the time to work on anything artistic that your class needs and still be able to have a little bit of time to put towards the more general classes like math, like English, where you're always going to kind of get the same result. You don't want multiple studio electives because they can be conflicting schedules. You're going to need to invest a lot of time in the work needed in those classes to pass. Do use the first generation label to your advantage to apply for scholarships, financial aid, other college-specific resources, and even special graduation cords to wear. Although that sounds a little less important, I would say it's more important to have those resources when you're labeling yourself as a first generation student. I want to reiterate that it doesn't matter if your sister or your brother went to school, or your aunt or your uncle went to school and graduated or didn't finish. As long as neither of your parents went to college, you are still a first generation student. And a lot of colleges will give students extra money from financial aid or access to various scholarships that you qualify for being a first generation student. So look into whatever opportunities are there for you. Don't be afraid to use that label on yourself if you qualify. These two kind of go hand in hand, so do ease into college classes. Figure out what you can realistically handle day to day. 5 classes and a full-time job is not sustainable without sacrifice. Keep this in mind as you apply for classes and jobs if it's applicable to you. Obviously, there are people who work like 2-3 jobs while going to school full-time. There is a sacrifice to be made, and that's that most of that person's time is going towards working and doing homework while they're at work. This is not to say that you can't do it, but the sacrifice could very well be your physical health, your mental health. You could be very stressed and strained all the time. You could get little to no sleep. Understand that it will come at a cost somewhere, whether that's your social life, whether that's your mental health. You want to make sure that you can realistically handle the coursework that you are signing yourself up for. And this goes hand in hand with don't overwhelm yourself with a ton of classes. This will come at the sake of your mental health. I know countless people who are still in college. Most of my friends are still in college, and taking a lot of classes in general, even without working a job, can still be such a strain on your mental health. It doesn't matter if you're working on top of that. These classes require a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of brain power to focus on what this person's saying, and then you have a whole digital component that you need to do every week on a day-to-day basis. It is very straining. I need to break down this cliche that school is not tough and you're young, you should be able to have all this energy. School is hard. School is hard. Let's not forget that. Okay, we are at a higher educational level than we've ever been at this point in our lives, and everything matters. Everything you do, how you spend your time matters. How you spend your money matters at this point in your life. It is extremely stressful. If you're a full-time student or a part-time student, or you're also going to work or you don't work at all, it can be equally stressful no matter what situation you are in. School is tough, and it can come at the sacrifice of your mental health. I know that it did for me. Throughout this entire journey, I lost myself for a while. Freshman 50 is a really common thing that happens to people because it is very stressful to be in this situation as a brand new adult. And so don't let anybody tell you that you're young. You should be able to handle 5 classes and a full-time job and still have a social life. And if you have a relationship, you've got that too. And if you have any pets, you also have technically dependents. Or if you have kids, there are a lot of people with kids that also work, that also are parents and also go to school. School's hard. So that's why I really want to stress this point. Figure out what you can realistically handle. Don't overwhelm yourself. You want to get things done as quickly as possible, sure, but it will come with a sacrifice. It will. So for my sake and for your sake, take your time, ease into it if you're new, and just try to focus on why you're doing it. Because when I focused on getting my degree, when I focused on having a better job opportunity and a better life for myself and, my future, it really helped push me through. Understand why you're going to school, because that will be the last thing that will keep you going across the finish line. Trust me. Do maintain a medium to high GPA for the sake of your academic career long term. Try not to fail, drop, or incomplete classes. You don't need to be perfect, but risking your GPA can hurt you in the future, especially if you're planning to be in college for a long time and you want to earn your master's degree or your doctorate degree. But ultimately, you do not want to be on academic probation because of a low GPA. In case you don't know, academic probation means that you're essentially proving to the college or university that you can be a good student in order to continue studying at that college. They can literally kick you out if you have a low GPA for a really long time. So you want to make sure, in addition to making sure you can handle the coursework that you're taking, take it slow and steady and maintain a medium to high GPA, okay? You don't have to be a straight A student. You don't have to be the top of your class, but you do need to maintain at least a 3.0, or I guess whatever your university requirements are. A 3.0 is a pretty good benchmark to have. Having a high GPA also gives you advantages over students with lower GPAs. I didn't know how I felt when I heard about that not everyone got the advantages that I did when I maintained a high GPA. I was able to register for classes a year in advance. Don't hate me. That's just one of the examples that having a high GPA can have. You can also be on honor roll, and I know that looks more attractive to graduate schools when you're applying. So you want to make sure that you're just doing well in general, because if you're planning to be in school for a really long time, it can affect you. A couple of failures in the beginning can slow you down in the long term because they're looking at your GPA cumulatively. So that means those lower marks will drag you down from hitting that, higher GPA that you could accomplish. So just do your best in school. Make sure that you're taking on as many classes and coursework that you can realistically handle. And if you have no other choice, then understand that there is a sacrifice. Don't skip class. Attendance can literally affect your grade. So here's one of the big things about being an adult in college. When you're in high school and you miss a class because you're sick or you don't feel like going in, you're a little behind coursework, but you can play catch up or you can play extra credit and you'll be fine. In college, your professors don't really care if you show up or not. They get paid at the end of the day because you're paying for these classes. And understanding that you are paying for this class, you're paying for your education, meaning you want to kind of show up so that you can do well. Because as we know, your GPA can affect you in the long term. And if you're not showing up to class, you're not going to know the coursework, and you can't depend on other people to help you out, because at the end of the day, that's a stranger. Sure, there are nice people in the world, but you can't assume that of everyone every time. Of course, you want to make sure you read through the syllabus for every course so that you understand how the professor cares about attendance. A lot of professors are very lenient and let you miss maybe 1 or 2 classes if you have a doctor's note. It very much depends on the professor of that course. So you want to make sure you're reading your syllabus thoroughly. And that goes for regular, non-art students and art students in school. So you want to make sure that you're really paying attention to how much of my grade is affected by attendance. And if you have a health problem, make sure you bring it up to your professor. Usually they're very understanding. It just depends on the course, it depends on the college, it depends on a lot of factors. But a good general rule is to not skip class. Don't do it. You're paying for this course, and if you're not there, why are you there? why are you in the course if you're not going to be there? You're not going to perform well. And so this is one of those things. Attendance sounds like a really minuscule thing, but when it's literally affecting your grade, and not being there can literally drag down your grade from an A to a B, I think this is what sets apart mature adults from immature adults. And this is the time where you are tested on your punctuality. You are tested on your ability to meet deadlines. You are tested on your ability to meet all these little requirements at the cost of your education. I've got 2 more, bear with me. Do find work or internships to gain experience in your field before you graduate if you can. I'm speaking to my art students specifically here. These internships and all of this time that you're dedicating towards doing this job or volunteering, it can count for college credit, which is really, really good. You'll want to look into your college or university's requirements for earning college credit for internships. I know sometimes at my university, you needed to have a professor kind of sponsor you in order to get college credit for it. So in my experience, that was too much work. So what I did was I did the internship so that I could have something on my resume, which did help me in the long term because I've done 3 different internships and I've gotten a job at a performing arts center. So here's my last do. Do make sure to plan ahead. Don't wing it in college. Don't do that. Don't wing it. When you wing it in college and you don't know what classes you need to take, you are spending valuable money and you are spending valuable time taking classes that don't count towards your degree, potentially. So you want to make sure that you're staying in touch with your academic advisor to stay on track and ensure that all of the classes you're taking are counting towards your degree. You are less likely to have wasted credits at the end if you're staying on track and you're constantly in touch with your advisor. I would meet up with my advisors 2 times, sometimes even 3 times a semester. I would email them and I would say, hey, I want to go over my degree track. And they would be happy to sit down with me via Zoom or in person and talk to me exactly how we're going to plan out the next year. And having a high GPA really helped because it meant that I could solidify my places in those classes at least a year in advance and never be waitlisted and have everything on track and never have wasted credits, which I never ended up having. And this is really important. Obviously, situations change, things get complicated, especially if you're going from one major to another. Whatever suits you, that's fine with me. However, you want to make sure that you're staying on track with whatever plan you're going with. I'm telling you, by the time I graduated, I knew at least 3 of my advisors by first name. I even knew the advising portion of the college. I knew the manager. And I've had good advisors, I've had bad advisors. Usually at bigger schools, they'll give you multiple different advisors to choose from. And I remember at Valencia, I had one advisor the entire time for me. You want to make sure to stay in touch with your advisor the entire time through your academic career because it'll save you a lot of time, it'll save you a lot of money and a lot of stress by the end of it. They are literally there to point you in the right direction and say, hey, these are the classes you need. And they'll show you your degree audit and literally line by line tell you, you need this to finish, you need this to finish, you need this to finish. And they'll write it out for you, and they'll even send a debrief email at the end of it. Advisors were my best friend in college. I highly, highly recommend getting in touch with your advisor from the beginning. So that way, during the course of your entire academic career, you don't waste any money, you don't waste any time, and that way you have somebody to depend on whenever you're feeling lost, whenever you're feeling unsure of yourself in terms of your academic career. I want to do a little side note here. I highly recommend talking to one of your professors who has work experience in whatever field you want. I remember sitting down with this woman named Shannon Lindsay. She runs the art gallery at UCF. She was one of my favorite people to get in touch with during my time there. I'll touch more on this when I talk about UCF specifically in a different video, but that woman saved my life, because when I got rejected from my graphic design program and I first entered the visual arts management program, I remember emailing her and asking for a sit-down conversation so that way I could feel a little bit more confident in my decision to switch majors. And she helped me feel a lot more confident and a lot more secure in my decision. Whenever you're feeling that way, don't be afraid to reach out to your professors. They literally have so many students come in, and I don't see why they don't want you to succeed. Making sure you have somebody who's on your side is so important, because they will make you feel more confident and make you feel more secure during your academic career, because there's a lot of uncertainty, there's a lot of mistakes that you can make, and that's okay. I made mistakes. You don't have to be perfect. No one's perfect. And just making sure you're not too hard on yourself during this time, and you use as many resources as you can and talk to as many people as you can, because college is a very unique experience when you're there. So take advantage of the amount of people that are around you every day, because once you leave college, you're never going to be surrounded by that many artists all the time, professional artists, your professors. It's not going to be the same. So you want to take advantage of what you have when you have it, and find people who you can trust during your time and get as much valuable information as you can from them. Of course, you can reconnect later on, but take advantage now, like get to know as many people and network and make friends, because, those are the people who you might see in the future professionally. Okay, I think that's everything when it comes to do's and don'ts, and I think I've over-explained my academic journey at this point, so I think we're done. Anyway, thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Museful. I hope I have given you a lot of tips, a lot of do's and don'ts, a lot of information that you didn't know before when it comes to art and, going to school for art. I hope I have given you at least one new piece of information today. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Museful. I really hoped you enjoyed it. Please hit subscribe, please like the video, please comment down below your favorite part of the video and any topics you want me to cover. And please don't forget that I upload 3 times a month on Wednesdays, and I hope to see you next time.